When Albert Einstein passed away in 1955, the world mourned not just a man, but a mind that had changed the course of human thought. The silence that followed his last breath was filled with questions. What made his brain so extraordinary? How could one mind reshape physics, philosophy, and our understanding of the cosmos? For decades, scientists, historians, and neurologists have tried to uncover the secret behind Einstein's brainpower. The structure that allowed him to see what others could not, to think in ways that defied traditional logic, and to visualize the universe as a dynamic, flexible reality rather than a static machine. His brain became a symbol of genius itself, a biological mystery wrapped in the wonder of human potential. Soon after his death, an autopsy was performed by Dr. Thomas Harvey, the pathologist on duty at Princeton Hospital. Driven by scientific curiosity, Harvey decided to preserve Einstein's brain for study. Without authorization from Einstein's family at first, he carefully removed it and divided it into sections. Later, when Einstein's son Hans Albert reluctantly gave permission, Harvey embarked on a lifelong mission to discover what made the brain of the world's greatest thinker different. The story of Einstein's brain would stretch across decades, inspiring controversy, fascination, and countless scientific studies that attempted to explain how a man who disliked formal schooling could perceive the deepest laws of the universe. Under the microscope, Einstein's brain looked similar to any other human brain: gray matter, folds, and intricate networks of neurons. Yet subtle differences began to emerge. The parietal lobes, which are associated with spatial reasoning and mathematical thought, were unusually developed. The inferior parietal lobule, an area critical for integrating sensory information and processing visual, spatial tasks, was larger than in typical brains. It was as if nature had sculpted this region with extra precision, equipping him with a biological advantage for abstract reasoning and visual imagination. The grooves, or sulci, in these areas were less prominent, creating smoother connections between neurons, potentially allowing faster and more efficient communication across regions of the brain. Scientists found that Einstein's brain weighed about 130 grams, slightly below the average adult male brain. This fact shattered the myth that genius is linked to brain size. Instead, the uniqueness lay in its internal architecture. Microscopic analysis revealed that the ratio of glial cells to neurons in some parts of Einstein's brain was higher than average. Glial cells are the unsung heroes of cognition. They nourish neurons, clear waste, and help maintain efficient communication. A greater density of glial cells might have provided his neurons with better metabolic support, enabling longer, deeper periods of thought. This could explain how Einstein was able to concentrate for hours or even days on complex problems, visualizing scenarios like riding on a beam of light through space. The morphology of Einstein's prefrontal cortex, the seat of complex decision, making and abstract thinking, also appeared distinct. It was structurally well integrated with other regions, supporting the theory that his brain functioned as a hyper-connected network rather than a collection of isolated centers. These connections might have allowed his imagination, logic, and intuition to merge seamlessly, giving birth to ideas like relativity, which required the fusion of mathematical precision with visionary creativity. Yet to understand the real secret of Einstein's brainpower, one must look beyond biology and into how he used his brain. Structure provided the foundation, but his mental habits transformed it into something extraordinary. Einstein's ability to think visually rather than verbally was one of his defining traits. He described his thought process as more of images than words. While most people solve problems by manipulating language, Einstein used mental imagery, thought experiments, to simulate physical phenomena. He once imagined himself chasing a beam of light and realized that if he caught up to it, it would appear frozen. That simple visualization laid the groundwork for his theory of special relativity, changing our understanding of time and space forever. This capacity for visualization may have been linked to the structural strengths of his parietal lobes. In essence, His brain was wired to turn abstract concepts into vivid pictures. When he contemplated gravity, he imagined a man falling freely in an elevator, feeling weightless, an image that helped him conceive of general relativity. Such imagination wasn't random. It was supported by the way his neural circuits processed spatial and mathematical relationships. His brain didn't just calculate, it saw equations as forms and movements. Einstein's corpus callosum, the bridge connecting the two hemispheres of the brain, was found to be thicker than average. This structure facilitates communication between the left hemisphere, thus associated with logical reasoning and analytical thought, and the right hemisphere, linked to creativity and spatial ability. A thicker corpus callosum could have enabled faster integration of rational and imaginative thinking, allowing him to shift fluidly between abstract math and visual creativity. This rare harmony of hemispheres might explain how he could derive profound scientific theories through imaginative storytelling and intuitive leaps rather than traditional step-by-step reasoning. When scientists mapped the motor and sensory cortices, they noticed an asymmetry in the regions associated with his left hand. Einstein was right-handed, yet his brain showed enhanced connections linked to left-hand control. Some neurologists believe this unusual pattern reflected how much he used his hands in his thinking process. Einstein was known to play the violin passionately. Music, for him, wasn't merely a hobby, it was another language of thought. The neural stimulation that came from musical expression may have strengthened pathways related to creativity, pattern recognition, and emotional reasoning. Einstein once said, "The theory of relativity occurred to me by intuition," and music is the driving force behind that intuition. Indeed, his love for music could have tuned his brain to perceive harmony not just in sound, but in the fabric of the cosmos itself. The more researchers studied Einstein's brain, the clearer it became that intelligence alone didn't define him. Many people possess high IQs, but few change the world. What made Einstein's brainpower unique was the synthesis of structure, imagination, discipline, and an insatiable curiosity. His neural architecture gave him tools, but his attitude gave him direction. He approached problems with childlike wonder, asking questions others considered naive. That openness to uncertainty activated his brain in ways that most adults lose as they age. Curiosity, neuroscience suggests, enhances neural plasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections. Einstein's lifelong curiosity may have literally reshaped his neural networks, keeping his brain young and adaptable even as he grew older. Dr. Marion Diamond, a neuroscientist from the University of California, Berkeley, who studied preserved sections of Einstein's brain decades later, confirmed that his brain had an unusually high ratio of glial cells in the left inferior parietal region. She proposed that this could reflect a greater metabolic need due to intense neuronal activity in areas responsible for complex thought. In simpler terms, Einstein's neurons were likely more active, demanding more support, and therefore surrounded by more glial cells. This insight reinforced the idea that Einstein's brain was not just anatomically unique, it was functionally optimized for sustained intellectual work. However, Einstein's genius cannot be reduced to anatomy alone. His cognitive abilities also reflected how he engaged his brain in daily life. He often worked in solitude, walking for hours, lost in thought. These long periods of quiet reflection allowed his subconscious mind to process ideas without distraction. Studies on creative cognition suggest that such incubation periods activate the brain's default mode network, a system involved in spontaneous thinking, imagination, and self-reflection. Einstein's brain may have been particularly efficient at toggling between this default network and the executive control network, which handles focused attention. That flexibility between focused and diffused thinking is crucial for creativity, and Einstein seemed to master it intuitively. His problem-solving process often began with intuition rather than logic. He once said, "I believe in intuitions and inspirations. I sometimes feel that I am right. I do not know that I am, This reliance on intuition stemmed from a deep trust in his internal thought process. Neuroscientifically, intuition arises when the brain subconsciously detects patterns from vast stores of experience and knowledge. Einstein had trained his brain to detect such patterns effortlessly. His ability to intuit the underlying simplicity of nature's laws was not mystical. It was the result of years of immersion and mental training that allowed his subconscious mind to make rapid, accurate associations. When we examine Einstein's brain from the perspective of modern neuroscience, it appears as a masterpiece of integration. The regions involved in abstract reasoning, spatial visualization, and creativity were unusually well connected. His brain wasn't divided between science and art, it united them. The right hemisphere's imaginative capabilities merged with the left hemisphere's analytical rigor. The structural uniqueness of his parietal lobes and corpus callosum provided the physical foundation for this unity, while his habits, curiosity, and imagination breathed life into it. It's also worth noting that Einstein's brain exhibited remarkable symmetry. Many geniuses display asymmetric brain structures that favor one type of processing, but Einstein's relatively balanced configuration might have allowed for more fluid and holistic thinking. His neurons likely communicated across regions that in most people remain relatively independent. This neural harmony could explain why Einstein saw connections between seemingly unrelated concepts like time, space, and gravity, and combined them into a single elegant theory. There is another layer to this mystery: Einstein's emotional intelligence. While he was known to be aloof at times, he possessed deep empathy and moral awareness. His concern for humanity, peace, and justice wasn't separate from his scientific genius. It was part of it. Emotional engagement activates brain regions that enhance motivation and creativity. Einstein's passion for truth and beauty gave his intellect direction and purpose. His brain didn't just calculate, it felt. And through that feeling, it reached profound insights about the harmony of the universe. Modern studies of creativity suggest that true innovation requires the cooperation of three brain networks: the executive network for focus, the default network for imagination, and the salience network for shifting between the two. Einstein seemed to navigate these effortlessly. When faced with a complex problem, his brain likely oscillated between focused calculation and free association, guided by his intuitive sense of relevance. His thoughts were not constrained by conventional academic boundaries. They flowed like music, structured yet spontaneous, logical yet poetic. Even the physical aging of his brain was unusual. Decades after his death, the preserved slices of Einstein's brain showed relatively well maintained neuron density compared to typical brains of similar age. This suggests that his lifelong intellectual engagement may have delayed neural decline. His brain remained active and plastic until the end, a reflection of how continuous learning and curiosity protect cognitive health. Einstein's brainpower, therefore, wasn't a mere accident of biology. It was a harmony between structure and spirit. The unique anatomy of his brain gave him the capacity to think differently, but it was his relentless curiosity, imagination, and sense of wonder that activated those capacities to their fullest. His neural networks became the canvas upon which the universe painted its deepest secrets, and through him, humanity caught a glimpse of cosmic order. The story of Einstein's brain is not just the story of a genius, it is a testament to human potential. It reminds us that our brains, too, are capable of extraordinary things when fueled by curiosity and imagination. Einstein didn't just use his brain to understand the world, he used it to reimagine it. His greatness was not locked in the folds of gray matter alone, it was in the way he allowed his thoughts to roam freely, unbounded by convention. His brainpower was the meeting point of biology and belief, of nature and nurture, of science and art. As scientists delved deeper into the mystery of Einstein's brain, the story began to take on a life of its own. His preserved brain traveled across states, hidden in jars, stored in boxes, and carried in the trunk of Dr. Thomas Harvey's car for decades. It became both a scientific relic and a philosophical question. What can the anatomy of one brain truly tell us about the nature of genius? Could the folds of gray matter reveal the roots of human creativity? Or was Einstein's brilliance something that transcended physical form, a product of how he trained his mind to think differently? The more researchers searched for physical explanations, the clearer it became that Einstein's greatness was the result of a perfect symphony between biology, imagination, and relentless intellectual passion. By the late 20th century, new imaging technologies offered scientists tools that Harvey could only have dreamed of. High-resolution scans of Einstein's preserved brain slices revealed patterns that hinted at an extraordinary neural design. The regions responsible for integrating sensory and cognitive information, the inferior parietal lobes, appeared to extend unusually far, as though nature had stretched them to make room for deeper conceptual thought. This area plays a crucial role in visualizing three-dimensional relationships, an ability essential to physics, geometry, and mechanical reasoning. When Einstein mentally chased light across the cosmos or imagined a man falling through an elevator shaft, these very regions of the brain would have ignited like constellations in thought. What made his parietal regions so fascinating was their interconnectedness. Neural pathways seemed to run more fluidly across hemispheres, suggesting that Einstein's brain might have processed information in a more integrated way than the average human brain. Rather than dividing tasks strictly between the analytic left and the creative right hemisphere, his mind seemed to weave logic and imagination together in a single fabric of understanding. The thicker corpus callosum, the great neural bridge, was the highway on which his thoughts traveled freely, enabling him to balance equations with the same ease that he composed musical harmonies on his violin. It is impossible to separate the physical design of Einstein's brain from the habits that shaped it. The brain is not a fixed organ. It evolves through use, pruning unused pathways and strengthening active ones. Einstein's daily routines, his hours of solitude, his long contemplative walks, his dedication to music, were not simply lifestyle choices. They were brain-building exercises. Each quiet hour gave his neural networks time to consolidate ideas. Each melody he played on his violin stimulated bilateral brain activity, merging emotion and logic, intuition and calculation. Neuroscientists today recognize that creative insight often emerges when the brain's analytical centers relax, allowing the subconscious mind to connect distant ideas. Einstein seemed to understand this long before neuroscience could measure it. He once admitted that his best ideas came not at his desk but while walking, daydreaming, or listening to music. His brain was a laboratory where science and art coexisted in perfect rhythm. As the 20th century unfolded, researchers tried to quantify Einstein's genius by measuring his IQ, but such efforts missed the essence of his brilliance. Intelligence tests capture speed and accuracy, but Einstein's gift lay in depth and originality. His brain was not faster, it was freer. The connections between its regions allowed for non-linear thinking, a form of cognition that jumps across disciplines and reimagines the boundaries of knowledge. When most scientists of his time were stuck within the rigid framework of Newtonian mechanics, Einstein's mind wandered beyond it, visualizing gravity not as a force but as the curvature of space-time. Such a conceptual leap required not only intellectual precision, but also an artist's imagination. His brain functioned like a multidimensional canvas, blending sensory intuition with mathematical abstraction. The structure of Einstein's frontal lobes also fascinated neuroscientists. These regions govern planning, problem-solving, and abstract reasoning. In Einstein's brain, the prefrontal cortex was notably well developed and connected, suggesting a heightened ability to integrate diverse sources of information. This might have allowed him to juggle complex ideas without losing sight of their simplicity. His famous equation, E=mc dials, is a symbol of that synthesis, the universe's deepest mystery expressed in the simplest mathematical form. It was as if his brain naturally sought elegance, the ability to compress vast truths into minimal symbols. Another striking feature was the unusual shape of his Sylvian fissure, the deep groove that separates the temporal and parietal lobes. In Einstein's brain, parts of this fissure were either missing or significantly shorter than normal, allowing these regions to communicate more directly. This absence of separation might have given him a biological edge in linking visual imagery with linguistic and mathematical reasoning. The very act of imagining physical phenomena and translating them into equations could have been made smoother by this structural shortcut. In essence, the architecture of his brain favored integration over isolation, a trait that mirrored the philosophical unity he sought in the laws of nature. But while scientists dissected his brain for clues, they also came to realize that no single feature could explain his genius. Einstein's brain did not follow a simple formula. It was the result of a lifetime of thought shaped by curiosity and wonder. Each neuron, each synapse, was sculpted by decades of mental exploration. Neuroplasticity, the brain's capacity to reorganize itself through experience, suggests that the more Einstein thought, questioned, and imagined, the more his brain evolved to support such thinking. His genius was not static, it was self-reinforcing. His mental habits rewired his brain, and his rewired brain, in turn, deepened his thinking. His childhood offers further insight into this remarkable development. Einstein was a late talker, and his parents once feared he might have learning difficulties. But that silence may have been the first sign of a mind that preferred deep internal processing over quick verbal expression. He learned best through visualization and experimentation rather than memorization. Instead of accepting what teachers told him, he recreated problems in his imagination. This visual, experiential form of thinking likely strengthened the neural circuits involved in spatial reasoning and abstract pattern recognition. By following curiosity instead of convention, he built a brain optimized for discovery rather than repetition. Einstein's notebooks reveal how he worked through problems. Sketches, arrows, scattered thoughts, and diagrams filled the pages. His reasoning unfolded more like an artist's sketchbook than a scientist's ledger. Modern cognitive science confirms that sketching and visual mapping enhance conceptual understanding by engaging multiple brain regions simultaneously. Each line and symbol Einstein drew was not just an equation but a neural exercise, connecting sight, movement, and reasoning into a single act of creation. The mind that wrote the equations of relativity was also the mind that drew them into existence. Even in his later years, Einstein maintained a childlike curiosity about the world. This quality, neuroscientists suggest, kept his brain's dopamine systems active. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter of motivation and reward. It fuels learning and exploration. By finding joy in discovery itself, Einstein sustained the very chemistry that kept his brain vibrant. While others saw aging as decline, he saw it as deepening. His neural connections may have slowed, but his imagination continued to soar, proving that creativity can remain alive long after youth fades. When researchers compared Einstein's brain to that of other gifted individuals, they found one commonality: a heightened ability to connect disparate ideas. Yet Einstein stood apart in how far he pushed this integration. He didn't simply solve scientific puzzles. He redefined the questions themselves. That level of abstraction required what some neuroscientists call global workspace activation, the synchronized activity of distant brain networks working in harmony. In Einstein's case, this might have been amplified by the unusual structural bridges between his hemispheres and lobes. His thoughts could travel faster, his associations broader, his insights deeper. One of the most intriguing theories about Einstein's cognitive style is that he experienced ideas almost physically. He described flashes of intuition as sensations rather than verbal concepts. This form of embodied cognition suggests that his sensory and conceptual networks were tightly interlinked. When he imagined the curvature of spacetime, he may have felt it as motion and shape rather than mere mathematics. The same sensory richness that made him passionate about music also infused his scientific thought. In his mind, the universe was not a set of cold equations. It was a living symphony of form, rhythm, and energy. The emotional side of Einstein's cognition also deserves attention. His empathy for humanity, his pacifist ideals, and his sense of moral duty were not separate from his intellect, but integral to it. Modern neuroscience shows that moral reasoning activates many of the same prefrontal regions involved in abstract thought. In Einstein's case, emotional and cognitive networks likely worked together, giving his ideas ethical depth. His brain wasn't just a machine for problem solving, it was a vessel for meaning. That integration of emotion and intellect allowed him to connect science with philosophy, turning theoretical insights into reflections on life and existence. Despite all these findings, Einstein himself would likely have dismissed the obsession with his brain's anatomy. He believed that the true measure of intelligence was not the accumulation of knowledge, but the ability to think independently. He valued mystery over certainty, intuition over rigidity. His humility was as profound as his genius. He once remarked that the difference between himself and others was not in intelligence but in curiosity. "I have no special talents," he said. "I am only passionately curious." And therein lies perhaps the ultimate secret of his brain power. Curiosity is not a static trait. It is an engine that drives the brain to grow. By constantly asking, why, Einstein kept his neurons firing, his synapses forming, and his imagination alive. As the years passed and the legend of his brain grew, it inspired generations of neuroscientists to study how genius arises. The consensus that emerged was both humbling and hopeful. While certain structural traits may offer advantages, the real key to extraordinary thought lies in how we use the brains we have. Einstein's brain was special not just because of its shape, but because of the life that shaped it. Every hour he spent questioning, imagining, and creating rewrote its circuitry. Every failure, every experiment, every flash of insight added another thread to the intricate tapestry of his mind. In the quiet of his Princeton study, surrounded by stacks of papers and the faint sound of his violin, Einstein often pondered the limits of knowledge. He saw the universe as a grand puzzle, one that invited endless exploration. His brain, in its unique structure, mirrored that infinite curiosity. It was both the instrument and the melody, the question and the answer. When he spoke of the beauty of nature's laws, he did so with the conviction of a man who had seen them not only through a telescope, but through the pathways of his own mind. The fascination with Einstein's brain continues to this day, not because it promises a formula for genius, but because it reflects the wonder of human potential. His neurons, now silent, once danced with the rhythms of the cosmos. They taught us that thought itself can be creative, that imagination is a scientific tool, and that curiosity is the true fuel of intellect. The microscopic details of his brain tell only part of the story. The rest is written in his ideas, in the equations that outlived him, and in the inspiration that still ignites young minds around the world. In the end, the secret of Einstein's brain power lies in a simple truth: the mind becomes what it loves. Einstein loved the universe, not as a distant spectacle, but as a living mystery that invited him to think, dream, and explore. His unique brain structure gave him the capacity to grasp its complexity, but it was his passion that gave those structures purpose. Biology built the stage, but curiosity wrote the play. And as long as humanity continues to wonder, question, and imagine, a part of Einstein's brainpower lives on within us all. Albert Einstein's journey through learning was as unconventional as the mind that carried him through it. From his earliest years, his path was not shaped by the rigid systems of education, but by the freedom of thought, curiosity, and an unyielding hunger to understand the mysteries around him. To the outside world, Einstein's youth appeared ordinary, quiet, slow, and sometimes even troubled, but within his young mind, invisible revolutions were already taking place. His way of learning was not through memorizing lessons or following rules, but through imagining, questioning, and feeling his way toward truth. In many ways, his defiance of conventional education was the very reason he became the most extraordinary learner of his time. As a child growing up in Ulm and Munich, Germany, Einstein showed little interest in formal schooling. Teachers found him inattentive, rebellious, and stubborn. He refused to learn by rote, often questioning the need to memorize facts that held no meaning to him. In a school system built on obedience and repetition, he was seen as a misfit. But behind his quiet resistance was a profound insight. Einstein did not believe in learning without understanding. He once said, "Education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school." To him, the purpose of learning was not to collect information, but to develop the ability to think independently. This early rejection of blind memorization would become one of the core pillars of his genius. Even as a boy, Einstein was driven by curiosity that bordered on obsession. At the age of 5, his father showed him a simple compass. The invisible force that made the needle point north fascinated him endlessly. He later described that moment as a revelation, the first spark of wonder that made him question the unseen laws governing the universe. That tiny magnetic needle became his first teacher, not because it taught him facts, but because it awakened in him the thrill of discovery. He realized that there were mysteries in nature that could not be seen, only understood through imagination and reasoning. That compass guided more than direction. It guided his mind. Einstein's style of learning grew from this early curiosity. He was not satisfied with surface explanations. He wanted to feel the truth of things, to see how principles connected across the physical world. This deep, emotional connection to knowledge separated him from the ordinary student. When most children memorized equations, Einstein wanted to understand their meaning. When others repeated what teachers told them, he asked, "Why?" again and again, often to the frustration of those who taught him. But this refusal to accept untested authority became the foundation of his intellectual freedom. By constantly questioning, he trained his brain to think critically and creatively, developing the habit of challenging assumptions, a skill that would later revolutionize physics. By adolescence, Einstein's rebellion against traditional education had intensified. The strict discipline of German schools, with their emphasis on obedience and conformity, clashed violently with his independent spirit. He once said that schools were like military camps for the mind, designed to suppress curiosity rather than nurture it. His teachers, exasperated by his attitude, even claimed he would never amount to anything. But Einstein's defiance was not laziness, it was vision. He sensed that true understanding could not be forced, it had to be discovered through curiosity. When he eventually left school before graduation, it was not a failure but a liberation. He stepped outside the cage of conventional learning into the vast landscape of self-education. Einstein's time in Switzerland marked the beginning of his transformation into a self-taught scholar. Free from the constraints of rigid schooling, he began to study what truly fascinated him: mathematics, philosophy, and physics. He devoured books by great thinkers like Newton, Maxwell, and Kant, but he did so in his own way. He didn't just read their words, he reimagined their ideas. For Einstein, studying was not an act of consumption, it was an act of creation. He would take a concept, turn it over in his mind, visualize it, and test it against his own intuition. He often carried notebooks filled not with notes from lectures but with sketches, thought experiments, and equations born from curiosity. His brain was not a container for information, it was a forge where ideas were melted and reshaped. One of the hallmarks of Einstein's unconventional learning was his use of imagination as a scientific tool. Where traditional education separated creativity from analysis, Einstein saw them as inseparable. He believed that imagination was the key to understanding the universe. His famous thought experiments, like imagining himself chasing a beam of light, were exercises in mental creativity, yet they led to groundbreaking discoveries. This approach was revolutionary because it broke the boundaries between art and science. Einstein's learning process was a dialogue between logic and imagination, between reason and wonder. He learned not by memorizing the results of others, but by mentally reconstructing the process that led to those results. While most students followed teachers and textbooks, Einstein followed his curiosity wherever it led. Sometimes this meant isolating himself from peers who didn't understand his way of thinking. He preferred solitary walks where he could think freely. During these moments of solitude, he allowed his mind to wander, connecting distant ideas and visualizing the patterns of nature. This unstructured reflection, which traditional education often dismissed as idleness, was one of his greatest tools. Modern cognitive science supports this. Creative breakthroughs often occur during moments of relaxed focus when the brain's default mode network activates, allowing insights to surface from subconscious connections. Einstein intuitively lived this principle long before it was scientifically known. Einstein's reading habits were another reflection of his independence. He never confined himself to one field or author. He explored philosophy to understand the foundations of reality, literature to feel the human spirit, and mathematics to sharpen his precision. He studied Spinoza, whose vision of a harmonious universe inspired Einstein's own belief in the order of nature. He read Hume and Mach, who challenged him to question assumptions about space and time. Every book he read became a dialogue with his own mind. He didn't absorb ideas passively. He wrestled with them, debated them, and often disagreed. This active engagement trained him to think originally rather than conform to authority. At the Polytechnic Institute in Zurich, where Einstein eventually completed his studies, he was still far from a model student. Professors often found him inattentive or distracted, preferring to study subjects that fascinated him instead of following the official curriculum. He skipped classes he considered dull and borrowed notes from friends later. But outside the classroom, he worked tirelessly on his own projects, exploring electromagnetic theory, questioning Newtonian mechanics, and developing mathematical models that would later lead to relativity. His education was happening not within the walls of the institution, but within the freedom of his own curiosity. In the quiet of his room, he was crafting the foundations of a new universe of thought. Einstein's approach to learning also emphasized understanding through simplicity. He often said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." This philosophy guided how he absorbed information. Instead of memorizing complex formulas, he would distill them to their essence, seeking the simplest possible interpretation. This mental clarity allowed him to perceive connections others missed. His ability to simplify without oversimplifying was a result of deep comprehension, and that comprehension was born from curiosity, not instruction. To Einstein, simplicity was not ignorance, it was mastery. His curiosity-driven mind was insatiable. He questioned not just physics, but the nature of knowledge itself. He often wondered why human beings were able to comprehend the universe at all. The most incomprehensible thing about the universe, he once said, is that it is comprehensible. That philosophical curiosity led him to approach science not as a cold pursuit of facts, but as a search for meaning. For Einstein, learning was a spiritual act, a way of connecting with the deeper harmony of creation. His education was not confined to laboratories or books. It was woven into the very fabric of his being. Einstein's career as a patent clerk in Bern provided another example of his unconventional learning. Working in an office that examined technical inventions, he spent his days reviewing electrical devices and machinery. This job, though mundane to others, became a secret school for him. It exposed him to practical engineering problems, forcing him to think logically and creatively about mechanisms and systems. During quiet hours at his desk, he filled his notebooks with equations and ideas. The Annus Mirabilis of 1905, his miracle year, emerged directly from this period of quiet intellectual freedom. While others saw a low-level job, Einstein saw a laboratory for the imagination. The patent office gave him time to think, and he used that time to reshape physics. The power of his curiosity was that it never stopped evolving. Even after achieving fame, Einstein continued to ask questions others had abandoned. He wasn't satisfied with the success of relativity. He wanted to understand the deeper unity of all forces. He pursued the elusive dream of a unified field theory until his last days. Though he never completed it, his persistence embodied his philosophy of lifelong learning. To Einstein, education was not something one finished. It was a way of living. The more he learned, the more he realized how much remained unknown. His humility before mystery kept his curiosity alive until the end. Einstein's learning methods also reveal an important truth about creativity. It thrives on freedom and playfulness. He approached complex ideas with a sense of joy, often describing scientific discovery as a form of play with the universe. He saw imagination as a playground where the laws of nature could be tested and reshaped. In his later writings, he compared scientists to children who never stopped wondering why the sky is blue. That childlike curiosity, unburdened by fear of failure, was his greatest advantage. He never let the weight of reputation or expectation crush his sense of wonder. In every problem, he saw an opportunity to explore. Another fascinating aspect of his learning process was his comfort with uncertainty. Most people find not knowing uncomfortable, but Einstein thrived in it. Uncertainty, to him, was the space where creativity lived. He did not rush to conclusions, he lingered in questions, allowing ideas to evolve naturally. This patience with the unknown is what made him different from most thinkers. Where others sought quick answers, Einstein sought deeper understanding. His curiosity was not about finding immediate solutions. It was about exploring possibilities. Einstein's unconventional learning also reflected his belief in intuition. He often relied on what he called the music of reason, a sense of inner harmony that guided his thoughts even before logical proof appeared. Modern neuroscience supports this idea that intuition often arises from the brain's subconscious synthesis of vast amounts of information. Einstein's years of deep thinking had trained his subconscious mind to recognize patterns that his conscious mind could later formalize mathematically. His intuition wasn't mystical. It was the result of a lifetime of curiosity-fueled learning. His curiosity also extended beyond science into moral and social realms. He was fascinated by the nature of human behavior, the pursuit of peace, and the relationship between science and ethics. He once said that imagination and curiosity must be guided by compassion, for knowledge without humanity leads to destruction. This moral curiosity made him not only a great scientist, but also a great thinker of conscience. His way of learning embraced the whole human experience, merging intellect with empathy. Einstein's legacy as a learner continues to inspire because it proves that greatness doesn't depend on perfect schooling or high grades. It depends on the courage to think differently. His unconventional path reminds us that education should awaken curiosity, not extinguish it. His story is a call to reclaim learning as a creative, living process. Einstein showed that the human mind reaches its highest potential not when it follows instructions, but when it dares to wander. Einstein's curiosity was not a passing trait, it was the very rhythm of his consciousness, the pulse that carried him through the years of doubt, rejection, and discovery. It was curiosity that kept him awake long into the night, staring at the ceiling of a small Swiss apartment, wondering how light would behave if he could travel alongside it. That question alone, a childlike thought experiment, would one day become the foundation of his greatest work, the theory of relativity. But the path to such brilliance was not paved by structured learning or institutional praise. It was carved out of rebellion against conformity, against rote learning, and against the very idea that knowledge could be confined within textbooks. Throughout his life, Einstein rejected the notion that intelligence was about memorizing facts or mastering equations. He famously said, "I never teach my pupils, I only attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn." For him, learning was an act of exploration. He approached new subjects the way an artist approaches a blank canvas, with anticipation, not fear. Every formula, every idea, every unanswered question was a window to something larger. This mindset transformed ordinary learning into a spiritual quest, where curiosity was not just a tool for discovery, but a way of living. During his early years, teachers often misunderstood his attitude. His refusal to conform was seen as laziness, his silence as indifference. But in truth, Einstein was listening to a deeper voice inside him, one that pushed him to seek understanding rather than approval. When he encountered new ideas, he didn't simply accept them. He tested them in his imagination, turning them around like sculpted objects to see them from every possible angle. This act of mental play was his classroom, his laboratory, and his meditation. His years at the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich revealed both the strength and the limits of his unconventional learning style. He often skipped classes, preferring to study independently or debate with close friends about the mysteries of physics and philosophy. Einstein didn't study to pass exams, he studied to grasp the truth. He once remarked that the purpose of education should be to train the mind to think, not to memorize. That philosophy made him appear undisciplined in the eyes of his professors, but in reality, it was the seed of genius germinating in solitude. When he took a job as a clerk at the Swiss Patent Office, the world assumed his academic ambitions had faded. But the opposite was true. Surrounded by stacks of patent applications, he found the perfect environment for deep thought. The monotony of his day job allowed his mind to wander freely. Each design and mechanical idea that passed across his desk sparked new questions about the nature of energy, motion, and light. It was during these years that his curiosity reached its full bloom. Without the constraints of formal academia, Einstein was free to think purely, unbounded by authority or tradition. His curiosity was not only intellectual, it was profoundly emotional. When he read about the works of Newton, Maxwell, and Lorentz, he felt a connection that transcended time. He sensed the spirit of inquiry that drove those minds, and it inspired him to join the same invisible conversation. To Einstein, curiosity was not a distraction from the serious business of science. It was the serious business. It gave meaning to his life and clarity to his thoughts. Even his failures were shaped by curiosity. When a theory didn't work, he did not abandon it with frustration. Instead, he saw it as an opportunity to dig deeper. Each failure was a clue, each mistake a stepping stone. His relentless questioning of accepted truths often frustrated his peers, who preferred stable ground. But Einstein believed that science must live in motion, that truth was not static but ever evolving. He once said, "The important thing is not to stop questioning. Curiosity has its own reason for existence." Those words became the essence of his philosophy. Einstein's curiosity also connected science with art. He saw music, especially the violin, as a way of understanding harmony and structure. Playing Mozart or Bach was not a hobby, it was a form of scientific meditation. The same patterns that govern music, he believed, governed the universe. This blending of emotion and intellect gave his thought a rhythm unlike any other scientist's. His discoveries were not cold calculations, they were symphonies of insight and imagination. Friends and colleagues often described his eyes as childlike, filled with wonder even in old age. That eternal curiosity made him both approachable and mysterious. He could listen to a student's simple question with the same seriousness as he gave to a complex theory. He never lost the beginner's mind, the ability to see the world as if for the first time. That quality is what separated him from ordinary intellects. Most people grow older and stop asking questions. Einstein grew older and asked deeper ones. His curiosity-driven thinking also defied specialization. While most scientists confined themselves to narrow fields, Einstein allowed his curiosity to roam across physics, philosophy, mathematics, and even ethics. He pondered the moral dimensions of science, warning the world about the dangers of misuse. His curiosity was not limited to understanding the how of things, he also sought the why. This gave his intellect depth and humanity, turning him into a philosopher of science rather than just a practitioner. The pattern of his thinking was cyclical. He began with a question, nurtured it through imagination, tested it with logic, and then returned to curiosity. Each answer sparked a new question, a new frontier. This self-renewing cycle kept his mind alive for decades. He believed that true learning never ends, that each discovery should lead to humility rather than pride. To him, knowledge was like light. It could illuminate the darkness, but it could never reach infinity. In his later years, as fame surrounded him, Einstein's curiosity did not fade. Despite global recognition and countless honors, he continued to question his own theories, even the theory of relativity. He spent his final decades searching for a unified field theory, a single framework that could explain all the forces of nature. Although he never found it, his pursuit itself became a lesson to the world. It showed that curiosity, not success, is the true measure of greatness. Einstein's learning methods have influenced generations of thinkers. Modern education systems still struggle to balance discipline and creativity, but Einstein's life offers a model. He proved that self-directed learning, guided by curiosity, can achieve far more than rigid instruction. His approach reminds humanity that the thirst for understanding must come from within, not from fear of exams or authority. Even today, his name is synonymous with genius, but behind that genius was a mind forever exploring, forever curious. His life teaches that learning is not a stage of youth, but a lifelong journey, one that requires courage to question and freedom to imagine. His unconventional methods were not acts of rebellion, they were expressions of authenticity. He refused to mold his mind into the shape society demanded. Instead, he shaped society's understanding of what a mind could be. As the story of Einstein continues to echo through time, his curiosity remains the thread that ties his achievements together. Every idea he ever touched bore the fingerprints of a restless soul searching for truth. He showed the world that curiosity is not a luxury of the gifted. It is the birthright of every human being who dares to wonder. And in that endless act of wondering, he revealed the true secret of intellectual freedom, that the universe opens its secrets not to those who memorize, but to those who ask. His life, in essence, was a dialogue between the known and the unknown. Each discovery answered one question, but whispered 10 more. Yet he was never disheartened by that imbalance. He found beauty in it. For him, the universe was not a puzzle to be solved once and for all, but a symphony to be heard piece by piece. Every melody of understanding invited another, more mysterious harmony. That endless music of curiosity became the soundtrack of his existence. Einstein's unconventional learning was a revolution disguised as simplicity. He taught the world that thinking differently is not defiance. It is the lifeblood of progress. His curiosity-driven thinking built bridges between science and imagination, between logic and wonder, between the human heart and the cosmos itself. Through him, humanity learned that true wisdom begins not with answers, but with the courage to ask, why? Einstein's mind was a realm where imagination ruled supreme, a place where thought transcended equations and reality was reshaped by vision. To understand how Einstein discovered the mysteries of the universe, one must look not into laboratories filled with instruments, but into the theater of his imagination. For him, science was not merely a collection of facts or mathematical proofs. It was a journey into the unseen, guided by the power of visualization. His discoveries were born not from experiments conducted in glass and steel, but from mental experiments, vivid and alive, played out within the infinite expanse of his thoughts. Einstein often said that imagination was more important than knowledge. He believed that while knowledge defined what humanity already knew, imagination opened the doors to what it could discover next. This belief shaped his approach to every problem he encountered. Instead of confining himself to the existing frameworks of science, he allowed his mind to wander beyond them. He could close his eyes and travel through space at the speed of light, feel the distortions of time, and visualize the bending of space itself. In those silent mental journeys, he found the keys that unlocked the universe's deepest secrets. From an early age, Einstein's imagination was a force of nature. As a child, he was fascinated by a simple compass that his father gave him. The invisible force that guided the needle filled him with awe. He couldn't see the magnetic field, yet it was undeniably real. That moment planted a seed in his young mind. The idea that the invisible might be just as real, or even more real, than the visible. He began to imagine hidden forces and unseen dimensions long before he could express them in the language of mathematics. This habit of imagining became his lifelong method of discovery. When faced with complex scientific questions, he didn't reach for tools, he reached for his mind. He performed what he called thought experiments, or Gedanken experiment, where he would imagine himself in hypothetical scenarios and observe the consequences. One of his most famous thought experiments occurred when he asked himself what it would be like to ride alongside a beam of light. This simple act of imagination, born out of curiosity, would later evolve into the foundation of his theory of special relativity. In his mental world, light was not an abstract concept, it was a living, dynamic presence. He visualized himself chasing it, seeing how its waves behaved, and asking whether time itself would change from that perspective. No laboratory on Earth could have recreated such an experiment, but his mind did. He used imagination not just as a creative spark, but as a scientific instrument more powerful than any telescope or microscope. It was in these mental journeys that he bridged the gap between intuition and reason, between wonder and understanding. Einstein's visualization techniques allowed him to see what others could only describe in equations. For instance, while most physicists were tangled in mathematical complexities, Einstein saw the universe as a grand geometric fabric. He could picture gravity not as a pulling force, but as the curvature of space, time caused by mass and energy. When he developed the general theory of relativity, it was not because he had new data, it was because he could see space bending and time stretching in his mind. Later, when astronomers confirmed his predictions, they were merely proving what he had already visualized years earlier. His imagination was not chaotic, it was disciplined, guided by logic and refined by intuition. Einstein treated imagination as both art and science. He once said, "The gift of fantasy has meant more to me than my talent for absorbing positive knowledge." His thoughts often began like dreams, wild, abstract, almost poetic, but through contemplation and reasoning, he sculpted them into scientific truth. It was as if he first saw the painting of the universe in his mind and then used mathematics to describe it. This balance between imagination and reasoning defined his genius. While others tried to separate art from science, Einstein blended them seamlessly. He often compared his creative process to that of an artist composing music. When he played the violin, his imagination was at work. Melodies guided his mind into rhythm and harmony. That same sense of harmony later emerged in his understanding of nature's laws. He believed that the universe, at its core, must be elegant and simple, much like a beautiful composition. His theories were not just scientific, they were expressions of aesthetic truth. Visualization also shaped how Einstein communicated his ideas. His ability to describe abstract concepts in vivid, relatable imagery made his work accessible to others. When he spoke about time slowing down or space curving, he wasn't reciting equations, he was painting pictures with words. His metaphors brought the invisible to life. He turned science into a form of storytelling, allowing the world to glimpse the universe through his eyes. But imagination, for Einstein, was not limited to understanding the physical world. It was a means of exploring the human condition. He often pondered moral and philosophical questions, visualizing humanity's place in the cosmos. He saw science as a tool for expanding human awareness, not merely for technological progress. His imagination allowed him to empathize with future generations, to foresee the consequences of scientific advancements. That foresight led him to warn against the misuse of atomic energy, a warning born from the same visionary mind that had unlocked the secrets of energy itself. Einstein's power of imagination also had a spiritual quality. Though not religious in a traditional sense, he felt a deep sense of wonder toward the universe. He often spoke of a cosmic religious feeling, a profound awe at the harmony and order of creation. His imagination allowed him to feel this connection intimately, to sense the unity between the smallest atom and the vastness of the cosmos. It was this sense of wonder that gave his work a timeless quality, bridging science and spirituality in a way few others have done. Even as an old man, Einstein never lost his childlike ability to imagine. In his quiet moments, he continued to visualize the universe in motion, chasing new patterns, seeing new possibilities. The same spark that lit his mind as a child with the compass still burned brightly decades later. That enduring imagination was the secret of his intellectual vitality. Where others saw finality, he saw new beginnings. Where others saw mystery, he saw invitation. His imagination also protected him from the rigidity of the academic world. Many scientists of his era became trapped in conventional thinking, unable to see beyond established theories. Einstein refused to be confined by authority. His imagination was his freedom. It allowed him to challenge Newton's laws, to reimagine the concept of time, and to propose that reality itself might depend on the observer. These ideas seemed impossible at first, but through imagination he made the impossible thinkable, and through mathematics he made it real. In moments of solitude, Einstein often described his thinking as a kind of inner cinema. He could see scenarios unfold, watch particles move, and feel forces interact in ways no human had seen before. His mind became a laboratory of light and motion. Each image, each scenario, was a step toward revelation. He would walk, play music, or simply stare into space, letting his imagination weave connections between ideas that seemed unrelated. And then, suddenly, clarity would strike, a flash of insight born not of calculation but of vision. The beauty of Einstein's imagination lies in its universality. It was not a gift reserved for geniuses. It was a reminder that imagination is the most human of all powers. He showed the world that progress depends not just on intelligence, but on the courage to dream. He proved that imagination, when guided by curiosity and disciplined by reason, can reshape the boundaries of reality itself. Even today, scientists follow in his footsteps, using visualization to explore the cosmos, from black holes to quantum worlds. The mental experiments he began more than a century ago continue to inspire new generations. His legacy is not only in his equations, but in the way he taught humanity to imagine beyond limits. He transformed science from a field of facts into a canvas of possibilities, reminding us that before every discovery, there must first be a dream. Einstein's imagination was the bridge between what is and what could be. It turned questions into visions and visions into discoveries. Through his eyes, the universe was not a cold mechanism, but a living masterpiece, one that invited endless exploration. His power of imagination was in truth his greatest invention, the invisible engine that drove every breakthrough. It was not merely a gift he possessed, it was the essence of who he was, the dreamer who looked into the void and saw infinity smiling back. In the second half of Einstein's journey through imagination, the world begins to see that his discoveries were not merely the products of intellect but of vision, an extraordinary ability to see what others could not. His imagination was not a vague, fanciful talent, it was structured, purposeful, and intensely disciplined. He treated his imagination as a scientific tool, refining it with reason and nurturing it with curiosity. For Einstein, visualizing the unseen was as real as touching the visible. Every equation he wrote, every theory he developed, began as an image in his mind long before it appeared on paper. His mental world was a vast, endless canvas. He could close his eyes and project scenes of light beams racing through the void, clocks ticking at different rates, and planets warping the invisible fabric of space. This inner vision was so vivid that he often lost awareness of his surroundings. He described his thinking as combinatory play, the ability to merge images and ideas from different realms of experience until they formed new patterns of meaning. This process was spontaneous but not random. It followed a rhythm of intuition and logic working together in harmony. Einstein's thought experiments revealed how imagination can pierce through the limits of conventional science. The famous train and lightning experiment, for example, was born entirely within his imagination. He pictured a man standing beside a railway track as lightning struck both ends of a moving train. To the man, the strikes appeared simultaneous, but to a passenger on the train, one strike occurred before the other. This simple mental scene shattered centuries of belief in absolute time. From it, Einstein derived one of the most profound truths in physics, that time itself is relative to the observer's motion. No laboratory or telescope could have shown this. It was an image, born in silence, that transformed the world. Einstein's visualization ability allowed him to think in dimensions that language struggled to describe. When he contemplated the nature of gravity, he didn't imagine invisible forces pulling on objects. He imagined space itself bending and curving around massive bodies. In his mind, stars and planets didn't move through space. They moved along the contours of a cosmic fabric that responded to their mass. This vision became the heart of general relativity, a theory that redefined gravity not as an attraction but as geometry. When he finally expressed this vision in equations, it was like translating a magnificent painting into symbols. The mathematics confirmed what his imagination had already revealed. But Einstein's imaginative power extended beyond scientific visualization. It shaped his entire philosophy of life. He believed that the same creative force that drives an artist to paint or a poet to write is the force that drives a scientist to discover. Imagination, in his view, connected human beings to the mysteries of creation itself. He once said that imagination was a preview of life's coming attractions, a glimpse into the future potential of human understanding. That statement reflected his conviction that imagination is not escapism, it is evolution in motion. In his private writings and letters, Einstein often described moments of sudden clarity that emerged from long periods of reflection. These were not random flashes of inspiration, they were the culmination of deep visual exploration. He would spend days, sometimes weeks, silently turning a single idea over in his mind, sketching mental images of it from every angle. Then, suddenly, everything would align. The images would merge into a coherent vision, and a new truth would emerge. He compared this process to music, a symphony of thought where harmony and balance guided the final composition. His imagination also influenced how he taught and inspired others. When students or colleagues struggled to grasp his theories, Einstein didn't simply explain with formulas. Instead, he invited them to imagine, to picture themselves floating through space, watching the stars bend and light curve. He knew that once a person saw the concept, understanding followed naturally. In doing so, he demonstrated that imagination is not only for the creator, but also for the learner. It is the bridge between knowledge and comprehension. There was a certain playfulness in Einstein's use of imagination. He approached problems with a sense of wonder and joy. Even when faced with the most difficult scientific challenges, he treated them like puzzles to be explored, not obstacles to be overcome. This playful attitude allowed him to think freely, unburdened by fear of failure. He believed that creativity thrives in a relaxed mind, and imagination, like a child's curiosity, must be nurtured with joy. That playfulness was his secret weapon. It allowed him to see possibilities that others dismissed as impossible. Imagination also shaped Einstein's moral and philosophical views. He often imagined the future of humanity, visualizing both its progress and its perils. When he realized that his famous equation, eta mc dot, could lead to the creation of atomic weapons, he was deeply troubled. His imaginative foresight allowed him to understand the moral weight of his discoveries. He began to advocate for peace, urging the world to use science for unity, not destruction. Through imagination, he saw beyond the laboratory, to the fate of the world his work would influence. In his later years, Einstein turned his imaginative mind toward the ultimate question, the unification of nature's forces. He dreamed of a single, elegant theory that could explain the workings of the cosmos in its entirety. a theory of everything. Though he never completed this quest, his pursuit itself became a testament to his imaginative endurance. Even in old age, his mind remained young, reaching for visions that lay beyond the horizon of human understanding. He once wrote, "I am enough of an artist to draw freely upon my imagination. Imagination encircles the world." Those words captured his lifelong belief that the power to imagine is the power to create reality. Einstein's visualization skills also revealed a profound truth about the human brain. Neuroscientists studying creativity later discovered that his method of thinking, linking abstract symbols with vivid mental images, engaged both hemispheres of the brain in harmony. Logic and imagination, analysis and intuition, were not separate for him, they were partners in the same dance. This integration made his mind extraordinarily flexible, able to leap between intuition and reasoning without losing coherence. He didn't just calculate the universe, he felt it, saw it, lived it in his imagination. His notebooks were filled with sketches and visual cues rather than dense equations. These were not idle doodles, they were snapshots of his inner visions. Each curve, arrow, or symbol represented a moment of clarity in his thought process. His handwriting, often uneven and hurried, reflected the speed of his imagination racing ahead of language. It was as if he struggled to capture the visions before they faded. His equations, though complex, were footprints left behind by a mind walking through worlds of light, time, and gravity. Einstein's imaginative process also had a meditative quality. He often described moments of deep thought as a state of stillness, where the boundary between the self and the universe dissolved. In those moments, he felt as though he was not inventing ideas, but discovering truths that already existed, hidden within the fabric of reality. This belief gave his imagination a sacred dimension. It was not about creating illusions, but unveiling the hidden order of existence. He saw imagination as a way of aligning the human mind with the cosmic mind. Even his personal life was guided by imaginative empathy. He could visualize the emotions of others, understand their perspectives, and connect across boundaries of culture and nationality. This ability made him not only a great thinker but also a humanist. He imagined a world without divisions, without prejudice or hatred, a vision he expressed through his advocacy for peace, equality, and global unity. His imagination reached beyond science into the realm of compassion. When he spoke of imagination, Einstein spoke not as a dreamer detached from reality, but as a visionary grounded in truth. He saw imagination as the bridge between the known and the unknown, between what humanity is and what it could become. He believed that every breakthrough in human history, from fire to flight, began as a spark of imagination in someone's mind. His life was living proof of that belief. The theories that redefined physics were once mere dreams, dreams that became reality through persistence and vision. As Einstein's life drew toward its end, his imagination remained undimmed. Visitors to his Princeton home often found him lost in thought, scribbling on scraps of paper, still exploring, still dreaming. To the very last, his mind wandered through the stars, chasing light, chasing understanding. He once told a friend that his greatest joy came not from what he had discovered, but from the mysteries that still awaited discovery. For him, the universe was an unfinished poem, and imagination was the pen that would someday complete it. His legacy endures not only in equations or scientific revolutions, but in the spirit of imagination that he inspired across generations. Artists, musicians, philosophers, and scientists alike continue to draw from his example. He showed that to imagine is to live beyond limits, to reach into the unknown with courage and wonder. His life reminds humanity that imagination is not an escape from reality, it is the seed from which reality grows. In the end, Einstein's imagination was the truest expression of his greatness. It allowed him to see the universe as an artist sees beauty, as a philosopher sees meaning, and as a scientist sees truth. His discoveries may have explained the mechanics of the cosmos, but his imagination gave it soul. Through his mind, the universe became not just a place to measure, but a mystery to marvel at. And in that endless act of visualizing the unseen, Einstein became more than a scientist. He became a visionary who taught humanity that to imagine is to awaken the infinite within. Einstein's habit of questioning established beliefs was not just a characteristic of his personality, it was the core of his scientific genius. In a world where most people accepted the teachings of authority and tradition, Einstein dared to doubt everything. From an early age, he was unsatisfied with answers that lacked depth. When teachers told him something was true, he wanted to know why it was true. This restless curiosity made him different from his peers and often caused friction with the rigid education system of his time. He believed that progress in science could never be achieved through blind obedience, but only through the courage to challenge what others considered unchangeable. Einstein's questioning mind led him to explore ideas that seemed impossible or even absurd to others. He did not take the theories of Newton or Maxwell as absolute truths. Instead, he treated them as stepping stones toward something greater. He once said, "Blind belief in authority is the greatest enemy of truth." This conviction guided his approach to every problem. When he studied light, time, and motion, he asked questions that no one else dared to consider. What if the speed of light never changes? What if time itself is not fixed? These questions were the seeds of his theory of relativity, which shattered centuries of classical physics and redefined how humanity understands the universe. Einstein's ability to challenge convention came from his deep independence of thought. He refused to conform to the expectations of the scientific community. While other physicists followed the established mathematical models, Einstein used imagination and logic as his tools. He was not afraid to make mistakes or propose ideas that seemed unrealistic. This freedom allowed him to see connections that others missed. He often worked alone, away from academic circles, because solitude gave him the clarity to think differently. To Einstein, questioning was not an act of rebellion, it was a method of discovery. His attitude extended beyond science and into life itself. He questioned political systems, social hierarchies, and even the nature of religion. He believed that every human being should think for themselves rather than accept the opinions of others. This belief made him a symbol of intellectual freedom. Einstein's letters and speeches often encouraged young people to never fear questioning authority, reminding them that innovation is born from doubt, not certainty. His open mind also made him humble. He admitted that he was always learning and that no theory, even his own, should be considered final. Through this relentless habit of questioning, Einstein transformed how the world approaches knowledge. He showed that science is not a collection of fixed truths, but a continuous journey of inquiry. Every great discovery begins with a simple but powerful question: what if? His courage to challenge established beliefs gave humanity a new way of thinking, proving that true wisdom comes not from having all the answers, but from never being afraid to ask the right questions. Einstein's genius was defined not only by his creativity, but also by his ability to balance simplicity and complexity in his ideas. This balance became the foundation of his scientific success and his lasting influence on modern thought. Einstein believed that the most profound truths of the universe should be simple enough for anyone to grasp if explained clearly. Yet, behind that simplicity lay layers of intricate reasoning and complex mathematics. He often said, "Everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler." This philosophy guided him through his scientific journey, pushing him to uncover elegant solutions to the most difficult problems in physics. In a time when science was becoming increasingly complicated, Einstein sought beauty and clarity in every equation. He believed that the universe operated on principles of harmony and order, and that the human mind could express those principles in simple mathematical language. For Einstein, complexity was not the goal. It was the path to reach simplicity. When he developed the theory of relativity, he did not aim to make physics harder to understand. He aimed to make the laws of nature more unified, concise, and complete. He stripped away unnecessary assumptions and built a framework so elegant that it transformed our entire perception of time, space, and energy. Einstein's ability to simplify did not mean that his ideas were easy. His theories were often challenging to grasp, but the logic behind them was astonishingly clear once understood. He had a gift for seeing through the clutter of details that confused others. His mind worked like a sculptor's hands, chipping away the excess until only the essential truth remained. This is why his equations, though minimal in form, carry immense meaning. The famous formula E to mc div, perhaps the simplest equation in all of science, contains within it the entire relationship between energy and matter. It represents the ultimate triumph of simplicity born from deep complexity. This balance between simplicity and complexity also extended to how Einstein thought about the world. He approached life's mysteries with a childlike curiosity and wonder, yet his understanding of them came from the depth of his intellectual maturity. He once said that the mystery of life is the most beautiful experience one can have. This statement reflects how he saw simplicity not as the absence of depth, but as the highest form of understanding. For him, true genius was not about using big words or complicated formulas. It was about expressing universal truths in the most direct and beautiful way possible. Einstein's approach also influenced how other scientists communicated their discoveries. He inspired generations to seek elegance in their work, to find unity in diversity, order in chaos, and clarity in confusion. His writings and lectures were known for their poetic precision, where complex concepts flowed naturally into simple explanations. This ability to speak the language of both science and philosophy made him more than a physicist. It made him a storyteller of the universe. Through his balance of simplicity and complexity, Einstein demonstrated that knowledge is not measured by how much we know, but by how deeply we understand. His work reminds us that simplicity is not the opposite of sophistication, it is its perfection. In every great idea, there lies a hidden simplicity waiting to be revealed, and Einstein's brilliance was in his ability to uncover that truth again and again. Einstein's disciplined lifestyle and his devotion to creative solitude were two of the quiet forces behind his extraordinary brilliance. While many imagine genius as wild inspiration or chaotic energy, Einstein's mind thrived within rhythm, order, and simplicity. He understood that the mind needs space to think freely, and that solitude is not loneliness. It is the ground where great ideas grow. Einstein followed a calm, structured routine, avoiding distractions and unnecessary luxuries. He valued time as his most precious resource and guarded it fiercely. His daily life was simple: walking to his office, playing his violin, thinking in silence, and writing ideas that would change the world. This discipline of simplicity gave his mind the clarity it needed to explore the deepest mysteries of the universe. Einstein believed that creativity blossoms in stillness. He was never dependent on external excitement to inspire him. Instead, his ideas came from within. Often he would take long walks by himself, thinking deeply about the nature of light, time, and space. These solitary walks were not escapes from the world, but journeys into his own mind. His colleagues recalled how he would stare out of a window for hours, lost in thought, appearing detached from reality, when in fact he was solving the greatest puzzles of modern physics. His solitude was a creative laboratory, a place where his imagination could move without boundaries. Discipline for Einstein was not about rigid control, but about freedom through structure. He understood that the mind can only wander effectively when the body and life around it are steady. He maintained regular habits, often wearing the same kind of clothes to avoid wasting mental energy on trivial choices. His daily schedule was simple but deeply intentional, designed to minimize distractions and maximize thought. Einstein avoided unnecessary meetings, formalities, and social expectations. His priority was always his inner work, his pursuit of truth. This devotion allowed him to remain focused even during times of political unrest, personal struggle, or professional criticism. His solitude also shaped his emotional and philosophical depth. In quiet moments, Einstein reflected on human existence, compassion, and the moral responsibilities of science. He believed that a calm and humble life brought more happiness than the pursuit of success or fame. These quiet reflections helped him balance the immense weight of his discoveries with a sense of humanity and humility. His violin became a symbol of this harmony. He would often play it to clear his thoughts, finding rhythm in music that mirrored the order of the cosmos he studied. Music and solitude together nurtured his soul, giving him strength to continue his intellectual journey with peace and purpose. Einstein's disciplined solitude did not isolate him from the world. It connected him to it more deeply. In his letters, he often expressed gratitude for silence, calling it the language of the universe. He knew that in the stillness between thoughts, the most profound insights often appear. His discoveries were not just the result of intelligence but of patience, reflection, and the courage to be alone with uncertainty. In an age where noise and speed dominate human life, Einstein's way of living remains a timeless lesson. True creativity does not come from chaos, but from calm. Through his disciplined lifestyle and love for solitude, Einstein showed that the path to greatness is often quiet and inward. His life teaches us that the mind, when freed from distraction and nurtured with routine, can reach extraordinary levels of clarity. In his stillness, he touched the secrets of the universe. In his discipline, he discovered freedom. Einstein's solitude was not emptiness. It was the infinite space in which his ideas were born, where the mysteries of light, time, and existence unfolded in silence. Einstein's legacy of intellect in shaping modern science is one of the most remarkable chapters in human history. His ideas did not merely expand our knowledge, they completely transformed the way we understand reality itself. Before Einstein, science saw the universe as a predictable machine governed by fixed rules of time and space. After Einstein, that machine became something alive, flexible, and deeply interconnected. His theories redefined the nature of time, energy, and matter, showing that they were not separate entities, but parts of a single cosmic fabric. This revolution in thought continues to influence every branch of modern science, from physics and astronomy to technology and philosophy. His brainpower became a bridge between the classical world of Newton and the mysterious quantum universe that defines modern physics today. Einstein's greatest contribution, the theory of relativity, reshaped our understanding of how the universe works. By proving that time and space are not absolute but relative to the observer, he introduced a concept that challenged centuries of scientific certainty. His equation eta mc das revealed the hidden unity between matter and energy, a discovery that not only advanced theoretical physics, but also laid the groundwork for nuclear power, space travel, and countless technologies that define our era. The ripple effect of his ideas is visible in everything from GPS systems to the study of black holes and gravitational waves. His intellect turned imagination into mathematics, and mathematics into a new vision of the cosmos. Yet, Einstein's legacy extends far beyond equations and experiments. He changed the way scientists think about thinking itself. He proved that science is not merely about collecting facts, but about seeing connections that others cannot see. His approach to problem solving, mixing creativity, curiosity, and doubt, became the model for modern research. Scientists across the world began to see that progress comes not from following rules, but from daring to ask impossible questions. This shift in mindset led to the birth of new fields like quantum mechanics, cosmology, and theoretical physics. Even in areas that contradicted his own beliefs, such as quantum uncertainty, Einstein's influence was unavoidable. His debates with other great minds, like Niels Bohr, pushed science into new territories of understanding, showing that intellectual conflict can be a source of discovery. Einstein's legacy also shaped the moral and cultural dimensions of science. He believed that knowledge must serve humanity, not destroy it. After witnessing the destructive use of atomic energy, he became a voice for peace and global responsibility. His intellect was guided by compassion, reminding the world that true genius is measured not by what one can create, but by how one chooses to use it. He advocated for freedom of thought, education, and international cooperation, seeing science as a universal language that could unite rather than divide people. His words and actions inspired generations of scientists to pursue truth with humility and conscience. Even decades after his death, Einstein's influence continues to grow. Every major scientific breakthrough, from quantum computing to the detection of gravitational waves, carries the imprint of his theories. The very tools we use to explore the universe, from telescopes to satellites, are guided by principles he discovered more than a century ago. His image has become a symbol of human intelligence, curiosity, and the limitless potential of the human mind. More importantly, his legacy reminds us that science is a living process, forever evolving, and that one person's vision can change the destiny of the world. Einstein's intellectual legacy is not frozen in the past. It breathes in every discovery, every idea, every question that pushes the boundaries of human understanding. He taught us that knowledge has no final destination, that the pursuit of truth is endless, and that the greatest power of the mind lies in its ability to wonder. His brain may have been extraordinary, but his true genius was in how he used it, to connect imagination with reason, simplicity with depth, and science with humanity. Through his work, Einstein gave the world a gift that transcends time: the courage to think differently. His legacy is not just in what we know today, but in the endless possibilities his ideas continue to inspire.